Hey everyone, Evan Mazza here for a new episode of MazzaOnMets. Here to talk about all things New York Mets baseball, and we got a lot to talk about here on the show. And this latest episode is the Mets get set for the final stretch of the season, the final 8 weeks of the final eight series, excuse me, of the season. And they started off with their biggest series of the season to this point in Philadelphia. But we do have to start off and talk about a mixed bag of a road trip. They went on the road to they beat the Seattle Man. Well, technically they went to Williamsport, Pennsylvania first, but they after their series win with the Seattle Mariners, they obviously had two division rivals. They started a stretch of three straight division series with the Nationals, the Braves, and the Phillies. The Nationals and the Braves were on the road. They opened up with a 6 game road trip, and it was a mixed bag. Obviously, it got off to obviously with the Nationals. Like I said in the last show, they needed to get off to a good start. They needed to win this series. You had to beat a Nationals team that was there to beat, right? Floundering, they're in last place, and they're there to beat. You got to beat these guys. And the Mets have had their inconsistent season. The two series with the Nationals in the first series, obviously, they split that series 4 games. But you needed to carry over that momentum that you had from Seattle into Washington. You had to. And once again, the Mets win the first game of a series, and then lose the next two. And that is also something that's happened from time to time. This season, there's been a couple of times this year where they win a game, where they win the first game of a series big, like they did here, and then they lose the next two series. And so again, the Mets in the series with Washington had a down series. You won 2 out of 3 in Seattle, and then you didn't take advantage of Washington, and you fell asleep, and you didn't win that series, and you lost 2 out of 3. And it was again a mix of not getting big outs with the pitching, not getting big hits. It's been a mix of small mistakes here and there on defense. It was a mix of everything, and but they started off again really strong with a very strong offensive performance on Tuesday night with David Peterson on the mound. He pitched great. David Peterson always seems to pitch really well. David Peterson has pitched really well against the Nationals, but they went in there and took care of business there. They won 8-1, 8 runs and 11 hits. David Peterson on the day went 8 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts. Remember, he had that start against Washington. His last start against Washington, he pitched a shutout. But they're a perfect matchup for Peterson. For David Peterson, it's kind of the opposite of the Braves. I don't think the Braves are a great matchup for him, but the Nationals are, because the Braves are a team that's patient at the plate, and they will wait for their pitches, and they hit and they swing. The Nationals are not really a team that's, you know, patient at the plate. They swing it too much. They don't really take pitches, and they hit a lot of ground balls. That's kind of what Peterson's strength is. Peterson's strength is when he faces a team like that, and it's no surprise. Again, he dominates them. But the story also for the Mets is on offense. A lot of home runs. Mark Vientos, who's been red hot, home run. Beatty, home run. Juan Soto, he hit his 31st homer of the season. Um, you know, excuse me. So the Mets were able to get off to a quick start. The 5-run third inning, and they won the game 8-0. In that third inning, Brandon Nimmo had an RBI single. Jeff McNeil an RBI double, a 2 RBI double. Mark Vientos hits a home run, hit his home run right there. Then the top of the sixth, Brett Beatty hit a homer. Top of the seventh, Juan Soto hits a home run to make it 7-0. Jeff McNeil, he hits his homer to make it 8-1. So again, the Mets got off to a great start in this game. They got off to a great start and off to the races with the series that you needed to win, right? So you start off a series with a big win, but then you followed up the next 2 days with the same kind of loss, right? So Kodai Senga starts the next game, and he does well for the first 2 innings, and really the first 3 innings. The third inning was kind of not really his fault. There was some things that that really wasn't under his control, but the Nationals ended up scoring 2 runs in the bottom of the third. Dylan Cruz walked. There's Drew Milison reached on a catch interference by Luis Torrens, so it's one mistake that wasn't on Senga. Then there was a force out, and then a walk, and then a base hit by CJ Abrams made it 1-0. So and then a sacrifice fly made it 2-0. Josh Bell, you know, but you know, but again, Senga, not again, can't really fault him here. A couple of things didn't really go his way in this inning. But then in the top of the, but then in the top of the bottom of the fourth, excuse me, the bottom of the fourth, that's when he started to get hit up a bit. Paul DeJong led off with a double. Dylan Cruz then doubled him in. Drew Milas then hit a triple to make it 4-0. So, and I'm pretty sure that Senga go off for the fifth. Yes, he did. He actually Senga did go 5 innings. Then he got hit up again the fifth inning and gave up a run. So he really wasn't hit much in the third, but in the fourth and the fifth, he got hit up a bit, and it was 5-1 after 5 innings. And again, it sucks because it stinks because Senga pitched really well, I thought, in his last start, and I thought maybe that would be where he would get things back on track. And the first couple of innings, he looked great, but he continued to struggle again after that. You know, in the fourth, and the fifth innings. And I tell you, if the Mets are going to make a run, if the Mets are going to make the playoffs, and maybe even make a run in the playoffs in October, they're going to need Kodai Senga to pitch better than this. Kodai Senga has really, really struggled. I feel like Senga just isn't. Senga just doesn't trust the stuff fully. The fork, ghost fork, really isn't working as well as it did before his injury. Um, Pitches are being left over the middle, fastball being left over the middle. Yeah, that's another thing. A lot of pitches from Kodai Senga being left over the middle. It's a lot of pitches from Kodai Senga being left over the middle, and teams are just feasting off and hitting it. So, so the Mets really need Senga to get back going again because if he can, that is such a big piece to the postseason puzzle for them if they're going to get there. I mean, that's the thing. That's not a guarantee they even get there right now. But then the Mets again, and this is kind of what they seem to do when they did this again against the Atlanta Braves. They make these comebacks. You know, they make these comebacks and they give you a feeling of, ooh, maybe they'll win. Oh, maybe they'll win this game. They have a 3-run top of the sixth to cut the lead to 5-4. You know, and this is a topic we'll talk about later in the show. But actually, we'll definitely talk about it. Actually, we'll talk about after we talk about the game against the Braves on Sunday. But in the top of the sixth, they have a 3-run inning. Lindor walks, Soto walks. Okay, Alonso then doubles in Lindor to make it 5-2. McNeil hits a double. He drives in 2 runs. It's 5-4. See, that's where you gotta take advantage, right? You're down 5-1 against a bad baseball team. You need to take advantage when you get these runs in and start getting a rally. That's where you need to tie the game, take the lead there, and win the game. You know, look, the good baseball teams, if you're down against the bad teams, you're still able to come, not by much. You're still able to come back and win that game. And the Mets had a chance in the top of the sixth with the bases loaded and 1 out. Cedric Mullins hits a pop fly, shallow, right? So not even close for the runner to score. And then Luis Torrens at a ground out. That was their best chance to really tie or take the lead. Bases loaded, 1 out, and the Mets couldn't drive it in. Again, not getting the big hit. So, and then but you still had 3 more innings, right? Top of the seventh, 1, 2, 3. Top of the eighth, 1, 2, 3. Top of the ninth, 1 base hit by Mullins, and then a double play by Luis Torrens. So again, that means after that 3-run top of the sixth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 8 of the next 9 guys were retired after that. You know, the only one that got a hit was Cedric Mullins with 1 out, but even then it was a double play. You know, right after that from Luis Torrens. So the Mets weren't able to get anything in the next 3 innings. But you had a golden opportunity with bases loaded, 1 out, and you didn't score. Especially when you started to come back. You came back. It was 5-1. You came back and you made it 5-4 in the top of the sixth, but you weren't able to. They weren't able to. Actually, Brett Beatty hit another homer in this game. You weren't able to complete the comeback, and that has been such a huge problem for this team that they're not able to late in games, not able to complete the comeback. And you'll see it again on Sunday against the Braves, and we'll talk about that after. And then on Thursday, big game here. You cannot lose this game. They could not lose this game. And this was a game where they were up 2-0 or 3-1, excuse me, after the fourth. But then the game got away from them. Why? Because Sean Manaea, we talk about Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea also struggling, also not pitching as well as now. Now again, Sean, like Senga, Sean's been hurt. Manaea's been hurt all season long, essentially. He missed all that time from spring training to July, or shortly before right before the game, before the All-Star break was his first start. He's been, or his first, excuse me, his first game when he came out of the bullpen. Started from spring training to that point, hurt and out. Then he comes back, and you find out that he still has bone chips in his shoulder that he's been pitching through. But even then, this team again, just like Senga, needs Sean Manaea to pitch better than the way he's pitching. Sean Manaea in this game again, 4 2/3, 3 hits, 4 runs, and a walk. He has the strikeouts. His strikeouts are high. 8 strikeouts, that's a lot, but 4 runs, 1 walk, 3 hits. You're up 3-0 going into the bottom of the fourth, and you're not able to cruise and take control. And that is again another big problem with this Mets starting pitching staff right now. They get a lead because the Mets offense is at least hitting as of late, but they're not able to cruise and take control and get in a rhythm. For some reason, that hasn't been the case for the Mets starting pitching staff when they've gotten the lead. You can't explain it, but that's just how it's been. In the bottom of the fourth, when he gives up the 1 run, it was 2 outs and nobody on. It was 2 outs and nobody on. And that's been another problem that the Mets starting pitching has had. When they get 2 outs and nobody on, they're not able to finish the inning. That has been another thing that's been a problem. So he's got 2 outs and nobody on, but then he gives up a base hit to Andres Chaparro. He hits Riley Adams, and then actually no, I'm sorry, there wasn't 2 outs and nobody on. I totally forgot about this. C.J. Abrams struck out to lead off the inning, but Hayden Senger, who caught this game, a ball went by him. It was a pass ball. It was a swing and a miss by C.J. Abrams, but it was so wide, but the ball went past. It was on the outside corner, low and outside, and Senger reached out. The ball goes by him, and C.J. Abrams goes to first. So I'm sorry. I apologize. It wasn't 2 outs and nobody on. I totally forgot. It was C.J. Abrams striking out, but getting to first base because of a pass ball. So another small mistake, and that pass ball results in a run. Chaparro two at bats later, he gets a base hit. Riley Adams gets hit by the pitch. So that's two mistakes: pass ball and a hit by pitch. Pass ball and a hit by pitch. That's 2 mistakes there. That hit by pitch was with 2 strikes. Again, it's the little things and not finishing and not getting the last strike, getting the last out, making small mistakes. That is what this team has been doing throughout this whole stretch, these last 2 to 3 months now. So bases loaded, 1 out. Dylan Cruz hits into a ground out, force out, and it's 3-1. But even then, if Senger holds on to the ball, or if Manaea doesn't hit Adams with 2 strikes, you're out of the inning, and it's still 3-0 Mets, but it's 3-1. And then at the bottom of the 5th, Brady House gets a base hit, a sacrifice bunt by Jacob Young, and here's another small mistake. Pete Alonso gets the ball, and instead of going to first base, it was a bunt. Alonso grabs it or dives for it. Instead of tagging the base like he should have, or tagging the runner at first, Jacob Young, he goes to second base. He throws to second. The runner is safe. So instead of 1 man out and a man on second, it's first and second, nobody out. James Wood flies out. Sean Manaea hits C.J. Abrams. That's the second hit by pitch. He hits C.J. I mean, that wasn't a bad. That wasn't a bad where Manaea had no control. If you look at it right here, he had no control. Ball two, inside almost hits. He almost hit C.J. Adams on the. C.J. Abrams. He almost hit C.J. Abrams on the previous 2 pitches before he hit him. Ball 2, sweeper. He kept missing with the sweeper, and then he went fastball and hit him. So sweeper, almost hit CJ Abrams, and then fastball, he hits him. You know what Sean Manaea was doing there, which has been a consistent problem throughout the Mets starting pitching staff, not named Nolan McLean, at least so far, missing arm side. Missing arm side. Senga's missed arm side. Clay Holmes has missed arm side a ton. Sean Manaea has been missing arm side. You guys know what I'm going to say. That's coaching, folks. You guys know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to say. That's coaching. That's coaching. That is coaching. If your pitching staff, if your pitchers are having the same problems, that's coaching then. So, but he hits Abrams, and then there's a sac fly by Paul DeJong to make it 3-2. He walks Chaparro, and then finally Mendoza takes him out for Tyler Rogers. So here's Tyler Rogers. Here's another chance. 2 outs just to get one big out. Tyler Rogers needs to get one big out in this spot, and he doesn't do it. Gives up a base hit to Riley Adams. I think this is on the second or third pitch of the at bat. This was on the second pitch of the at bat. Gives up a base hit. 4-3 Nationals. Tyler Rogers has even though he's been overall, the numbers will tell you he's been fine since the Mets have traded for him. He has not gotten a big out at all. There's been a couple of times already. There has been at least 3 or 4 times where he's been asked to get one big out and he can't get that big out. He hasn't been able to get that big out. And Tyler Rogers again didn't get the big out. Again, he didn't get it. And that's a huge. So you got Ryan Helsley, who's really struggling. He's really struggled again in Atlanta. He was when there was a big lead, by the way. He really struggled again, and he's been struggling ever since they got him. And then you have Tyler Rogers, who numbers wise has been fine, but he hasn't been able to get big outs. You got him to get big outs. You got him to get that last 7 inning, and he hasn't been able to get it. So he doesn't get it here. Again, and it's 4-3. And the Mets, well, that's it. They get shut out from there. And then in the bottom of the 8th against Ryan Stanek, the Nationals pulled a 4-run inning, and that was it. They pulled away in the bottom of the 8th, and it was 9-3, and that was the ball game. And the Washington Nationals, no excuse whatsoever from the Mets. They lose a series to the Nationals. And that's no excuse. That's no excuse there. You cannot lose that game. You cannot lose that. They had a 3-0 lead. When you have a 3-0 lead in a game like that, you've got to take control. You've got to get comfortable, get into a rhythm, and win the game. And they weren't able to. And Sean Manaea wasn't able to. And that's just no excuse. I get Sean's hurt. I do. I understand he's probably not healthy. But you can't let the game get out of hand like that. You can't. And you can't, and overall, you can't be making small mistakes. You can't be hitting batters. Sanger has to catch that ball instead of letting it go by him. Pete Alonso can't throw to second. You have to tag first base there. It's these small little mistakes. Other than you got the big things like the lack of hitting run scoring position or innings from the starting pitching, et cetera, or bullpen not getting big outs, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also just the little small mistakes on the infield and around defense that they're making that's hurting them. So they drop a series 2 out of 3 to the Washington Nationals, which is inexcusable and unacceptable. And then they go to Atlanta. So so you immediately go, oh boy, here we go. Back to Atlanta we go. And the Mets come out in the next game and once again hit the ball really well in the opening game. They do really well. I believe they hit 6 home runs in this game. Nolan McLean pitched, and he's the big story. Let's talk about Nolan McLean first. Nolan McLean, it's been 2 starts, but he looks fantastic. Now, it's been 2 starts. But he came into this game on Friday, tough spot in Atlanta against the Braves, against Acuna and that offense, and he pitched really, really well. I believe he went a full 7. Did he go a full 7? Yes, he did. 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, gave up 2 runs, but he was fantastic. He was fantastic. It's a lot to ask for a rookie pitcher and he's pitching on Wednesday against the Phillies. So that's another big. The Mets have really called up Nolan McLean and said, all right, here you go. Good luck, kid. I mean, you play against the Mariners, good playoff team. You play against the Braves, who have always been tough and have been so good for years and still have those guys, even though they're having a down year. And now he's going to go out there on Wednesday against the Phillies and with the Mets trying to catch up to Philadelphia in the division. He's been thrown into this because the Mets really need him. And through two starts, he's been spectacular. Through two starts, he's been spectacular. So, so another great start here from McLean, and the Mets gave him a lot of run support. And when the Mets give a stud pitcher like McLean run support, you almost have to rub your eyes and go, "Whoa!" But but the Mets came out swinging. Literally, Juan Soto hit a home run. He hit a home run in the top of the second, and then the top of the second, in the top of the second inning. Actually, Soto walked in a run. Hayden Sanger got an RBI single in the top of the second. Uh, in the top of the third, Beatty doubled, and Cedric Mullins drove him in with a triple to make it 4-0. Actually, Pete Alonso also got a base hit earlier in the inning. And then Starling Marte hit a sacrifice fly to make it 5-1. Mark Vientos doubled to make it 6-1. Tyrone Taylor doubled, and he seems to always hit well against the Braves to make it 7-1. In the top of the sixth, I believe this was, or the top of the seventh. Top of the seventh, Soto hits his 2-run homer after Lindor doubles. Top of the eighth, Hayden Sanger gets an RBI base hit. That makes it 11-2. Juan Soto gets another RBI. That makes it 12-2. So one of the best Mets offensive performances of the season, 21 hits by the Mets offense in this game, a season high. I believe it was a season high, 21 hits. I know they had that game in Washington where they scored a lot of runs, but that was back in April. But 21 hits, 12 runs, gave Nolan McLean the run support that he needed. The only downside from this game was, again, Ryan, I mentioned him before, but Ryan Helsley really struggled the ninth inning of 12-4. You're up 12-4, and he gives up 3 earned runs, a walk, and 3 hits. So again, you're up 12-4. You need to kind of close that deal there, and Helsley really struggled then. Reed Garrett gives up a 2-run homer in the previous inning, the bottom of the eighth. We'll talk about him briefly after this recap of the series, because there's news that came out about him earlier today. But that's really the negatives of this game. More Ryan Helsley struggling, but overall, the big positives of this game was the offense hitting great. And Nolan McLean, big story. Nolan McLean was really, really, really good. So again, it's a lot to ask for McLean, and you have to just take it one star at a time with him right now. But through 2 starts, he's been great. His third start's going to be a challenge, though, against the Phillies in the race like this. So that'll be his biggest test. That'll be his biggest test yet. But the Mets brought him up to hopefully give him a spark. So through 2 starts, he's been really good. Game 2 is more of the same. Clay Holmes pitched really well. He went 6 innings. The Mets, again, gave him run support, 9 runs on 11 hits. They hit, I believe, this was the game where they hit 6 home runs. I got that mixed up from the day before, but they got 6 home runs in this game. Clay Holmes, 6 1/3, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. That's the 4th time now in his last 6 outings where he's been pretty good. Again, not anything great from Clay Holmes, not anything great, but all you're asking for your 4th starter is to just be decent, just be good. And that's the 4th start now, quietly, the 4th start now in the last 6 where Clay Holmes has been pretty good. So Holmes went through his struggles. There's still the questions of whether the innings are catching up to him and whether maybe he should be put in the bullpen. But again, that's the 4th start now in the last 6 where he's been pretty good. So if he's starting to kind of turn the corner a bit and pitching and just pitches like this and gives the Mets 5 or 6 good innings, that really helps the starting rotation a lot. So Holmes is able to follow up Nolan McLean's good outing with another good outing there. And he gets the run support. Like I said, 6 home runs. Jeff McNeil, Pete Alonso, Starling Marte, Mark Vientos, they all went deep. I think actually McNeil, I think, hit 2 home runs in this game, if I'm not mistaken. McNeil home run to make it 3-0. Pete Alonso homered, made it 5-2. Vientos homered, made it 6-2. Marte hit a homer to make it 7-2. Vientos hit a home run to make it 8-2. And yeah, McNeil homered twice. So all of their 9 runs came on home runs from Jeff McNeil twice, from Pete Alonso to Mark Vientos to Starling Marte. So the long ball was the key in this one, and the Mets were able to get a series win in Atlanta. Very rare to say that for these last 30-plus years. Very rare to say that. The Mets getting a series win in Atlanta. But they were able to win this series and at least wrap up their season series with the Braves on a high note in the terms of the series, right? But because of their hole that they've dug themselves in, because of the being so many being 6 or so games back of the division coming into yesterday's games, because of the fact that they're only holding on barely to the third wild card spot, it made sweeping the Braves a little bit, kind of a necessity. It was nice that you took the series, but you need to sweep the Braves, right? Especially a Braves team that's not playing again. The Braves are better than what their record says they are, and they know that, and I think everybody knows that, but they're still playing below their expectations and below their talent level. So you need to take advantage and win that series, and not only win that series, but if you can sweep them, sweep them. Especially when you just lost 2 out of 3 to Washington. So Sunday's game was still a big one, and unfortunately, it was back to where we usually see the Mets are when they lose baseball games. Small mistakes, starting pitching doesn't go deep into the game, bullpen kind of implodes. They go 1 for 9 in this game. Offense doesn't hit and get clutch, timely hitting. Peterson pitched in this game, 8 strikeouts, but he kind of fell off in the bottom of the sixth, and he was given a 2-run lead in the top of the second off the Mark Vientos home run. Again, kind of need to cruise there, but in the bottom of the sixth, he kind of lost it. And the Braves tied it. And then the bottom of the eighth, the Mets were scoreless in the bottom. The Mets were scoreless from the second inning to the eighth inning. Spot in the bottom of the second, the Braves score a couple of runs off Brooks Raley. Not Brooks Raley, excuse me, Gregory Soto. Soto had trouble throwing strikes. So it's kind of interesting because again, Gregory Soto has been kind of the best Mets reliever acquisition. So, from him and Ray, from him and Helsley and Rogers, Gregory Soto has actually been the best one. But in this one, he really struggled and couldn't throw strikes. He walked the batter, gave up a couple of hits, and the Braves took the lead. Mets, but again, just like before, and just like in Washington, the Mets kind of tease you, right? They have a comeback, and you think, oh, okay, they're going to pull this off. They get a run the top of the ninth off one because after Wanso gets an RBI single, it brings up Pete and Jeff McNeil, and neither of them get the job done. You have the tying run scoring position for Pete and McNeil. Go ahead runs on first. You have an opportunity to, come back, right, and win the game. But Alonso strikes out, and Jeff McNeil going for the 3-run homer for some reason. And that's you knew Jeff McNeil was going to try to go for the 3-run homer there, which he did, and he ended up popping out. That's sometimes what happens with Jeff, right? Jeff really wants to hit a home run, but then he drops the shoulder and it ends up being a pop out. And that's what happened here in this one. And the Mets lost the game 4-3. Again, you're happy you took the series, but you really kind of needed a sweep here. And you had a chance. You're up 2-0, and your most consistent pitcher on the mound. But Peterson struggled, but Peterson struggled in the bottom of the sixth. And again, it was that one inning where things kind of falter. And in that bottom of the sixth, Acuna actually ground out to begin it, but then there was the walks. Ozuna walks. He gets Albies to ground to a force out, and actually, this was a very good play. It's kind of a mix of Mets infield defense and Ozzy Albies hustling. So Ozzy Albies hits into a force out that should have been a double play. It was a ground ball right to Mauricio. But it looked like Mauricio and Beatty were kind of slow on their transitions. It looked like Mauricio threw it hard, but kind of almost took his time to throw it to second. Then Beatty kind of took his time to throw it to first. Didn't really rush through it. That's kind of the rookies and experience, unfortunately, that you see from Beatty and Mauricio on defense. I've always said, I feel like Beatty and Mauricio have been placed in missed positions. Beatty should not be a second; he should be a third. Mauricio should not be a third; he should be a second. And I feel like the Mets haven't really figured that out yet. That instead of putting Beatty all the time at second, he should be at third. Instead of putting Mauricio all the time at third, he should be at second. I feel like that's their most comfortable positions, but it's not something the Mets have been doing. So it's not something the Mets have been doing. They keep placing Mauricio third and Beatty at second, when I think they're better off in the opposite way. But their transitions weren't clean, at least quickness, in terms of quickness and trying to really turn that double play. But also, I think it was Ozzy Albies hustling his butt off to first base. So So yeah, I give credit to Albies there. So he hustles that out, and then Michael Harris gets a base hit. And then Peterson walks Nacho Alvarez. Here we go again. Those 7, 8, 9 hitters continuing to beat up the Mets. Nacho Alvarez walks, then Sean Murphy gets a base hit, tie game 2. And then Brooks Raley came in to close the inning out. So Pearson, that was the end for Pearson in this one. But again, Pearson not being able to finish the inning. It's one inning that kind of spirals, and they're not able to finish it. And again, kind of small mistakes, right? You should have gotten a double play, but you didn't on Ozzy Albies, but you didn't get it. Um, and then Gregory Soto in the bottom of the 8th inning, game still tied. Mets offense again kind of goes in the shutdown mode after Mark Vientos hit a 2-run homer in the second or third inning. I believe it was the second or third inning. It was the second inning. Mets offense goes in the shutdown mode against Bryce Elder. Once again, the Mets struggled against Bryce Elder, who has struggled all season long, but that's 2 starts now in a row where Elder pitched great against the Mets for some reason. For some reason, the Mets offense just couldn't figure out Elder again. But then the bottom of the 8th, the Braves finally broke through as Gregory Soto came in the game for Oscar Brazaban, who pitched the 7th inning, pitched in his first game with the Mets in about a month. He gives up a single to Ozzy Albies. Then after a pop out and a strikeout, he walks Sean Murphy, he hits Vidal Brujan, and then Jurickson Profar gets a base hit to drive in too. And again, so little mistakes, right? Not throwing strikes to Sean Murphy. Walks him, I believe. I think it was 1 strike to him. I'm sorry, he walked him on 4 pitches. Couldn't find the strike zone at all against Sean Murphy, and he walked him on 4 pitches. And then he hits Brujan. You know, the 8 guy, Murphy, walks him. The 9 guy, Brujan, hits him. He hits him with 2 strikes. I'm looking at it here with 2 strikes. With 2 strikes. You got 2 strikes on him. So the second game in a row, the Mets are hurt because their pitcher in the game before was Mania, or excuse me, in the Nationals games. Pardon me. In the Nationals games that they lost, it was Mania in the last Nationals game they lost, and then in this game, Soto hitting a batter with 2 strikes. It's walks and hitting batters again. Why? Why is that? It's just unfathomable. Small mistakes that this team continues to get hurt on. Happen. It was in the last game against Washington. Yeah, Sean Manaea hitting a guy with 2 strikes, and that results in a run. And now here with Gregory Soto. So Manaea, now Soto, that cost the team games. And then Profar gets a base hit to make it 4-2. You could also argue that Cedric Mullins, this is a base hit to center field, that Mullins maybe should have been at left instead of center, and Tyrone Taylor should have been left field. But I don't know. I think it would have been a tough play to catch for either of them, whether it was Mullins or Tyrone Taylor. But even still, Gary Cohen brought up on the broadcast after, you would think Tyrone Taylor would have been at center field in this game. Actually, the reason that is because, of course, Brandon Nimmo was hurt. Brandon Nimmo came out of the game against Washington with stiff neck, and he missed the next couple of games. He missed the whole series in Atlanta. He missed the last game against Washington. So, but he is back in the lineup today, Brandon Nimmo, against the Philadelphia Phillies. So you would think with Nimmo out, he also came in a pinch hit yesterday in the 9th inning against the Braves. But you would think with Nimmo out, maybe you put Tyrone Taylor at center field. I know Mullins isn't fully comfortable left, but I still think there would have been not much of a difference. Maybe you got a better chance with Taylor catching that ball, but I don't know if it would have been that much of a difference. I still think it would have been a base hit. But then the top of the 9th, Cedric Mullins gets a 1-out single. Lindor gets a single. Juan Soto gets a single. Like I said, it's 4-3. And you got Alonso and you got McNeil. Alonso pops out. Oh, excuse me. I said strikeout. I apologize. Alonso popped out. So my fault. Alonso popped. So I apologize. Alonso didn't strike out. He popped out. So Alonso pops out. I thought he struck out for some reason. Maybe I was thinking of a different game. I don't know. And then McNeil popped out. Not being able to get the big hit. Not being able to get the big clutch hit. Which goes to what I want to talk again. They win the series great, but you should have won this one, and that would have been a sweep. So, and you kind of need to sweep the Braves at this time of the season, right? Especially when the Braves are not playing their best. And that leads to this statistic that was going around yesterday, and we've known this all season long. The Mets are now 0-53 when trailing after 8 innings. They are 0-53 when trailing after 8 innings. 0-53. The good teams, the good teams have comeback wins. The good teams are able to fight and get a comeback win, are able to step right up in these critical moments, in these critical situations, in these big situations, these big innings against the best pitchers in the back in these bullpens of these opposing teams, and they win those games. For some reason, the New York Mets have not been able to do that this year. 0-53 says all you need to know. And there has been plenty of games, and you saw them in Washington. You saw it yesterday in Atlanta. There have been plenty of games where the Mets have had opportunities in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th or so innings this season to come back and win with the go-ahead run on third or the winning run on third or the winning run at second, whatever, or go-ahead runs on base, winning runs on base, whatever. They're there. They're on base. You know, they're right there. You just need to get that big hit, but the Mets have not been able to get the big hit. And it's amazing. It really is. No pun intended with the Mets slogan, but it's astounding that the Mets have not been able to get these big hits. They've not been able to get them late in the game when you're trailing. The good teams come back and win. You come back and the good teams are when you do come back, you're able to come back and win that game. But for some reason, the Mets this year have been able to come back, but not complete the comeback, not win the game. It's always they get close, but they don't get the hit. So, and that's a mix of a lot of things. You can point to coaching, you can point to approach at the plate, you can point to just guys not coming through in big moments. You can point to a lot of things, but that's really it right there. When the Mets season's over, we're gonna look back on a statistic like that and go, boy, if only you completed those comebacks that they had. If only you had got a sacrifice fly here or there, got a base hit here or there, whatever. 0-53 with trailing after trailing 8 innings. Trailing after 8 innings is that's not good. It tells you a lot about the Mets and about this season, about what this team is. It tells you a lot. And they had two games. They had two games just in this 6-game road trip. 2 games where they had an opportunity to win in the 8th and 9th innings, and they didn't do it, and they weren't able to complete the comebacks. They weren't able to. So, or get the big hit, right? Especially yesterday, just get the big hit. But they weren't able to get the big hit because this team has not been able to get the big hit all season long on offense, all season long. So, like I said before we preview the series with the Philadelphia Phillies, Reed Garrett, mentioned Reed Garrett. He's now going to be on the injured list. Frankie Montez has also been placed on the injured list. So he might be getting Tommy John surgery. Reed Garrett placed on the IL with right elbow inflammation. Jose Castillo has been recalled. So Reed Garrett now out of the bullpen. He's on the IL. Frankie Montez is on the injured list. And looks like his season might be over. He might be getting Tommy John surgery. This is interesting. Francisco Alvarez is taking batting practice at Citi Field. Let's talk about that very quickly. Francisco Alvarez, as we know, got hurt sliding second base in Williamsport during the Little League Classic against the Mariners last Sunday, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before that. He slid into second base and he jammed his right thumb. He was placed on the injured list. Carlos Mendoza had an update on Francisco Alvarez. He said he might be doing a rehab assignment this Wednesday, I believe. Which would be soon. Yes, he could begin minor league rehab assignment this Wednesday or Thursday if everything goes well over the next couple of days. That's what Carlos Mendoza said. So that's big, and the Mets need him. Luis Torrens is not gonna give you anything. Hayden Sanger, he had a decent trip against the Nationals and Braves, but he's not gonna do much. The Mets really need Francisco Alvarez back as soon as possible. They really need him back ASAP. So, and he was hitting the ball so well and hitting really well after coming back, and he's worked so hard coming back from the minor league rehab assignment, or excuse me, from being sent down to the minor leagues. Did a great job, and then he had suffered. Then he has this unfortunate injury that's now puts him back out of action. That's been the theme for Alvarez. It seems like one step forward, one step back the last 2 years, you know, and he gets going and then he gets hurt again and then he gets hurt. So that sucks. So the Mets need him back ASAP. So if he's able to get a rehab assignment on Wednesday or Thursday, if everything goes well today and tomorrow, and then he's back hopefully out there pretty soon, just in time for the beginning of September or so, well, that's big. That's very big for the Mets. Um, so again, that's some of the news around the Mets coming into the biggest series of the season to this point. The Mets return home to Citi Field after a 3-3 road trip to play the Philadelphia Phillies. And coming into this week, the Mets are a game and a half up on the Cincinnati Reds for the third wild card spot. And because of the loss yesterday, they are now 7 back of the Philadelphia Phillies. So the Mets really need to win this series, and not just win the series. I hate to put this on them, but you really need to sweep the Phillies, and that's a hard ask. That's a hard, tall, tough ask to sweep the Philadelphia Phillies right now. But if the Mets want to win this division, they're going to have to. The Mets are probably going to have to. They play 7 games against the Phillies. Um, the Mets now have, I believe, 8 series is left as they enter the last. Yeah, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. 10. I'm sorry. They have 10 series left. They have this series against Philadelphia and 9 more after that. The Mets series, they have 3 against the Phillies, 4, excuse me, against the Marlins. Then they go to Detroit. That's tough. To Cincinnati, which will determine a lot in the wild card. Then they go to Philly for 4, home against the Rangers, home against the Padres. That's tough. One last series against the Nationals. You better win that one. You better win that one. Then they go to Chicago against a Cubs team that's trying to also get back on track as well. And then they play the Marlins. So not easy. 2 with the Phillies, Cincy, Cincinnati, Detroit. Miami has played well. They'll definitely look to play spoil. The Marlins always seem to play the Mets well in these kind of situations here in September, August, September. The Nationals have already beaten you 2 out of 3. The Cubs need to get back on track and need to get back to playing good. The Padres have played well. And Texas, of course, has played well. So this is not an easy final 10 series of the season. So the Mets really have to button down, buckle up, and get back into gear and try to win these series because it's going to be a tough task for them to get into the playoffs this year because of the way especially with the way they're playing right now. So to preview this series of the Philadelphia Phillies again, if the Mets want to win this division, you really probably need to sweep these guys, and that's a tall ask. But if the Mets if the Mets have any hope of winning this division, you're probably gonna have to sweep the Phillies here. 3 games at home. It starts off tonight. Kodai Senga, who the Mets really need to give a good start. They need to get a good start out of him tonight. Brandon Nimmo, like I said, returns to the lineup for the Mets. But Kodai Senga, they really need to get a good outing out of him tonight. And he will be opposed by Christopher Sanchez, who's pitched really well for the Phillies, 11-4 with a 2.46 ERA. The Mets really need Senga to have a good game tonight. They really need him to give him at least 5 or 6 good innings tonight against a very good, tough Phillies lineup if the Mets want to win this one. Then tomorrow night, they will face Jesus Luzardo against Sean Manaea. Again, he needs to give them a good outing and give them at least a good 5 or 6 tomorrow night. And then Wednesday night, former Met Taijuan Walker pitched for the Phillies, and then Nolan McLean will make his 3rd start for the Mets. Again, not easy. Not easy. They've thrown him in there. They are throwing him in there. Mariners, Braves, and now the Phillies. So he is being thrown in there and see how he responds. So these past 2 tests so far, he's done really well the first 2 games. This will be his toughest one. Wednesday night against the Phillies. This will be his toughest one. So we'll see how Nolan McLean handles that on Wednesday night. Should be very interesting. But this is a very big, very tough series that the Mets have to have. If you win 2 out of 3, great. They'll take it. But if the Mets want to have any chance of winning this division, you need to win all 3. You need to win all 3. So this is a big series but the Mets overall, they do need to stack up. They got 10 more series left. That's it. 10 more series. 10 more series left. They need to stack up series wins now. They need to win some series. You won against Atlanta. Great. Now you got to follow that up. They won in Seattle. They didn't follow it up against Washington. So you won a series in Atlanta. You got to now follow it up against the Phillies. That's tough and tall because the Phillies are a great team, but you need to follow that up. You need to follow it up. You need to win some series. You got 10 more left. You need to win these series if you want to make the playoffs. Was division or wild card? You got to win. You got to win these series. So to check on the Cincinnati Reds, I think they are. Let's see where they are this week. The Cincinnati Reds are playing the. Oh, they're in Los Angeles to play the Dodgers. So the Reds will be in Los Angeles to play the Dodgers this week for 3 or for 4. Let's see, for 3 or for 4. For 3. So they're in LA to play the Dodgers for 3, and as the Mets are playing the Marlins over the weekend, the Reds will be playing the St. Louis Cardinals at home. So, but this week, as the Mets play the Phillies, the Reds play the Dodgers on the road. So, see what happens. This is crunch time for the Mets. This is crunch time, and they need to win some series. And it starts, and this is the biggest series of the season to this point for the Mets. I mean, every series is the biggest series of the season for the Mets, but right now, but they need to start stacking up and winning series. They need to win. So they got to start pitching better. They got to start hitting better. Got to start playing defense better. There's a lot of things got to play better. There's a lot of things got to start playing better. They got to be more consistent. You can't be having a good series and following up with a bad series. You know, so we'll see what happens there. This is a huge week of series for the Mets here. Huge week. So, but the Phillies and then the Marlins. So, and they're at home. So you've got, and they've struggled lately at home. So you've got to go back to winning at home and Citi Field, making Citi Field a home field advantage the way they did last year and the way they did throughout the first 2.5 or so months of this season. So let's see how things go for the New York Metropolitans. That's overall again a mixed bag this past week against Seattle, against Washington and Atlanta. A series where they should have won in Washington, and a series that you should have swept Atlanta. Take the series win. You won it. Great, cool. But you should have swept them. Washington, you should have swept them too. Let's be honest. You had leads the next 2 games against Washington, but you didn't hold them. So that should have been a sweep too in Washington, let alone 2 out of 3. So see what happens there. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens there for the Mets this week in Philadelphia. We'll be back on Thursday to recap this series against the Phillies, and then Miami previewing that one, and including everything, all news around the Mets going on as they hit the biggest stretch, as they hit the final 10 series of the season, and heading into the month of September. And we'll see. We'll be on this journey together as the Mets try to make the playoffs this year. A team that was 21 games over 500 2 months ago. She looked like a sure thing to make the playoffs, and now they're not so sure anymore to make October. And there's a lot of reasons why for that, but now it's a journey. Now it's a battle to see if this team can make the playoffs, and even to see how far they could go even if they get there. But not exactly what we thought when they were 21 games over with a 5.5 game lead just 2 months ago, especially the 21 games over part. So this week we'll look for MazzaOnMets and MazzaOnJets, MazzaOnRavens and MazzaOnJets show. The Ravens and Jets preseasons wrapped up over the weekend. The Jets were 1-2. The Ravens are 3-0. Once again, the Ravens did very well in the preseason, but the Jets finished their preseason 1-2. The Ravens finished their preseason 3-0. Look for both shows this week, and we'll just recap their preseasons. In those shows, I'll talk about what I saw and what I liked. And that's really all you can really talk about the preseason. Really what you saw and what you liked. There's not really a lot you can take out of when it comes to preseason football, especially now. The Ravens, of course, I mean, with the Ravens, they didn't even play their stars at all. The Ravens didn't play much of their stars at all, unless they were rookies. But they didn't play their starters throughout the entire preseason. The Jets, of course, did through the first 2 preseason games. They didn't win the third one. So, but we'll talk about what I liked and what I saw, and what could maybe you expect coming into the season. Then next Monday, we'll do both MazzaOnRavens and MazzaOnJets. I might combine both of them, and we'll just do a big preview of the season. Because this is the last week. This week is the last week of no football. This is kind of the NFL's new thing. They do the 3 preseason games, and then they have one free week, and then the next week begins the season. Remember, it used to be 4 preseason games, and then football began. And then the next week you had the season, but now it's 3 weeks. Everyone gets a week off after that, and then they're back to the season. So after this week, next Monday, we'll preview the entire season for both the Jets and the Ravens. I'll give you my take for my thoughts and opinions and takes on what I think each team will do and where I see these teams being. We'll talk about stuff even around the NFL. Um, and I'll also give you my Super Bowl pick on Monday. I'll give you my Super Bowl pick. Or I might say that for Friday, but we'll do Monday. We'll give you my Super Bowl pick for Super Bowl 60 on Monday. So that'll do it for this episode edition of Matt. That'll do it for this episode of MazzaOnMets. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Give this video a like, share, and subscribe. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. And let's go Mets.